Welcome, everybody, to the Hawaii News Now Digital Center. I am now joined by Representative Jackson Sayama. He is the representative for St. Louis Heights, Pālolo Valley, Maunalani Heights, Wilhelmina Rise, and Kaimukī.
Very good.
All right. I have to list all the neighborhoods you represent. And how's it going for all the neighborhoods out there?
It's going pretty good. I am very grateful to represent a very diverse district, all the way from the old neighborhoods in Pālolo and Kaimukī to the bustling, really vibrant scene at the Kaimukī small business area. So I think my community is doing very well so far. Yesterday, I know that we did have a small fire in Maunalani Heights, but other than that, all is well.
Oh, that's good to hear. And new legislative session, new priorities or ongoing priorities, depending on how you think about it. Housing, obviously, very big issue. What can we look forward to this session as far as actionable items for our housing crisis?
Well, that's an issue that I have to deal with personally. I still live with my family up on St. Louis Heights, and I can't imagine being able to afford buying a home anytime soon. So I see a lot of my folks in my generation leaving Hawaii because of this exact issue. And so this year the legislature is looking at continuing on the work from last year, investing into rental housing revolving fund, basically allowing it to be more affordable for people to rent housing. A lot of times there's this gap in the affordable housing units. We take care of those on the low income spectrum, and then there's on-market housing available on the higher income, but then we are missing the middle income folks who are typically the working families. So that's what we really are trying to focus on, is expanding that housing units.
Yeah, when you say it hits home, because there's a lot of folks like yourself that live in multi-generational households just because the down payment situation is very difficult, mortgages, I don't know, the rates, everything's so expensive. I mean, what hope do young people like yourselves have of owning? Is the American dream of home ownership dead then? Is it really a different...
I hope not. But, it's challenging for sure. And so we hope that through some of the actions I would take this session, that down the road it will become more of a reality for young working families to be able to buy their own home or condo. But for myself, as labor chair, I'm really focusing on connecting these local graduates with local and good paying jobs. So really expanding workforce development opportunities is going to be my focus this year.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the brain drain, we often talk about opportunities on the continent. How do you compete with that here? I feel like a lot of young professionals feel that they want to stay, they want to contribute, but they just can't make the numbers work. So what concrete, are there bills or legislation that you are really looking at to make that a reality for folks?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's really difficult to retain good talent here. But one of the things that we did last year was to expand the Helemu program, which is a state paid internship program that hires high school and university students into state agencies and give them that hands-on experience, so that when they graduate from high school or university, they have something on their resume that they could point to as experience. And last year we expanded that not only to state agencies but to private businesses, so that we are expanding the pool of workers and employers that are allowing to retain these talented people. But for this year, we were looking at some tax incentives, specifically the Hawaii healthcare preceptor tax credit. That one directly impacts the healthcare workforce. So expanding that to not only primary care, but specialty care, nurses and social workers, areas where all being affected by workforce shortages.
Yeah, no, these are good topics. Tax breaks, that is another top of mind topic. Because of the shortfall of federal cuts, you're going to have to kind of pick from this pot, like what priorities get money and get funding this session. A lot of lawmakers are going to be fighting for the same, for very limited resources, right?
Absolutely, more than other years. So after losing billions in federal dollars, the state agencies, the state legislature is really taking a hard look at what expenditures are going to be a priority. And so already during the finance budgets and the Ways and Means briefings, we see departments, trying to be more creative in how they allocate their resources. And that goes for the legislature as well when proposing legislation. I think this year you will see far fewer legislation with money in it to ensure that we do stay financially responsible to the circumstances. But also there's going to be some bills looking at tax revenue, maybe being able to do that on a more equitable basis. And I think the governor has presented his proposal that we'll be looking into this year.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Are you supportive then of rolling back some of these tax breaks for the wealthier demographic?
Yeah, I am supportive, especially given the financial circumstances of the state. But I'm very happy that we were able to pass that landmark legislation, giving the working families of Hawaii a much needed tax break. But going into the future, I think it's very reasonable to put this on pause until that we could stabilize our economy and we could get more revenue into the state, so that we could ensure that we're providing the money to the social services that are really supporting the families that are really struggling in the state.
Yeah, I think on the flip side, the people who say that getting rid of all of the tax breaks, no matter what level of socioeconomic status you're at, would impact the economy on a larger scale because, you'd impact employers, right? Or people that are doing the hiring.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Do you think that would have a negative effect as we look into, a year where they're forecasting a recession?
Well, I think that's a difficult thing to predict. It's not so much that we're removing or increasing their tax burden. We're just putting it back to where it was before the tax break legislation that we passed. So I don't expect that it will have a tremendous negative impact that trickles down to the overall labor force. But I think it's the responsible thing if we all want to get through this difficult situation together.
Yeah, well, just in talking to some of the small businesses, the increased minimum wage,
yes.
right? When you talk to the businesses, it is an additional kind of pressure on them in addition to tariffs, in addition to inflation that we all are feeling, right?
Yeah.
So what's your message to them, as we try to balance some of these costs and a lot of them not being able to find the labor they need to function, a lot of places closing?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, in Kaimukī, I'm sure you've been there, there were a lot of businesses that did close because of the effects from the pandemic. And fortunately, if you go into Kaimukī now, you see a lot of businesses, new businesses and old, really thriving. And when I did talk to the business owners in Kaimukī about minimum wage increases, a lot of them are actually already paying well above the minimum wage because that's what the labor market is demanding. If you are paying the minimum wage, you will not get new workers. It's that difficult to find qualified workers. So employees can be picky for who they work for. And so I think for local businesses, if they've been doing their homework, they're already well above the standard minimum wage and providing different benefits to make sure that they retain and attract qualified workers. But it's a difficult year for everyone. We all recognize that. And so that's why we're trying to figure out ways to be creative and to reduce those tax burdens, to reduce the overall socioeconomic burdens that are trickling down from the federal government.
Yeah. Additional costs. I know I was reading about kind of the paid family leave and paid medical leave. That's an additional cost also for employers, right? But it's something that we've tried to balance in order to give that to every working person here, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that don't have that luxury of having the ability to take time off for their children or for their family.
Yeah, so we've seen paid family leave policies pop up all over the country, and what we see is when an estate does institute a statewide paid family leave program, everyone benefits. Yes, there's going to be some cost to both employee and employer to pay into this system, but the benefits that the employee and employer get out of it are so much more valuable because you are taking care of your employees' families and themselves when they have children, when they got to take care of their mom and dad, and that's something that almost everyone working in the state of Hawaii is experiencing. They are juggling multiple roles, being a worker, being a mom or dad, as well as being a caregiver. So this paid family leave policy, I believe in the long run, will have substantial benefits for the working families. But it's still a work in progress, and we look forward to doing some of that this session.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, how optimistic are you considering that because of the budget situation and because of a lot of other pressures that we're experiencing economically here, that things like this are going to be able to push through?
Yeah, realistically, we don't expect much new policy to pass this legislative session, but that doesn't mean we could, do the work necessary. There's a lot of complicated factors going into something like paid family leave that can be negotiated, even if we don't see passage being a realistic thing this session. Another thing we put money into last year was for Department of Labor and Industrial Relations to do an actuarial and legal analysis for paid family leave. So that is expected to be completed at the end of this year and earlier next year. So really we need to wait for that study to be completed to make sure that we are crossing off all the T's, dotting all our I's to make sure this policy is actually going to be good for the state.
All right. And so to wrap it all up, I mean, is there any particular project or priority that you are proud of or that you really want to see past this session?
Past this session, well, recently we saw the DOE and BOE integrate financial literacy into graduation requirements. That's something that I had advocated for since coming into office 6 years ago. But looking into this future session, again, workforce development, if we could expand the Hawaii Healthcare Preceptor Tax Credit, I think that would be a substantial win for the entire state. Just because we're not expanding the credit itself, we're expanding who qualifies. And currently, the credit isn't fully used. So, hopefully by expanding this definition, we could fully utilize the credit without having a financial impact onto the state budget. And again, addressing a lot of the healthcare workforce shortages in the state.
Yeah, no, when we talk about brain drain, that's another thing. People leaving just because they can't afford the cost of health care, not just here on Oahu, but also especially on the neighbor islands.
Yes, and fortunately, the governor and his team were able to secure millions of dollars across the next 5 years to address those rural healthcare shortages. So this bill will hopefully tie well into that effort to ensure that those living on neighbor islands are able to access affordable and quality healthcare.
Yeah. Well, you did mention the financial literacy.
Oh, yes.
That actually, I actually was very interested in that. It had not passed for several sessions. I think it had always been brought up. What do you think finally got it over the finish line? Because when we talk about costs and keeping people here, young people sometimes just don't understand, even how to balance their books. Well,
yeah.
No one uses checkbooks anymore, but you know what I mean? Like,
no,
just
absolutely.
to make sure what you're earning is what you are spending and not overspending.
No,
right?
And that was the same issues that I was facing after graduating high school, graduating from college. I still had no financial literacy training or education. And so, I think it makes sense that in really tough economic situations that we make sure our graduates from high school are equipped with the skills necessary to make sure that they're able to manage and invest their monies in the most responsible way.
You had no education at Punahou on this? I'm going to have to call him out on it.
No financial literacy. No.
They don't teach you how to, balance your debts and or anything about interest rates?
No, not really.
Wow.
I mean, it was incorporated bits and pieces, but there wasn't a designated class or a graduation requirement for financial literacy. And so that's why I was so passionate.
Then?
Well, just, going through life, I was fortunate to have great parents that were able to teach me a little bit. And I had some friends going through the finance, and I would ask them questions and they would walk me through it. But it was a really painful process with some mistakes along the way, which, cost me money. And I wish, a lot of people can avoid. Before actually having to make these types of investments and decisions, whether about insurance, student loans, jobs, healthcare, credit cards, all these things are extremely important and aren't necessarily taught when you're going through these, education, whether it be high school or college. So I'm really happy that the Board of Education has incorporated that.
Is there any indication as to the types of people that will be teaching these type, because I think that we like this idea, but in the end, do we have enough professionals that can come in and teach this required course?
That's a good question. I think we are slowly incorporating those teachers into these curriculums. A lot of it is basic, so you don't have to have a whole lot of training to necessarily teach these courses. It's also more, we have a lot of community resources. One thing I've been doing while the Board of Education was planning all this out was connecting with banks and bringing them into the schools to teach about loans, about investments, right? So
they're already doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we do have resources available, and so I'm sure the schools to each individual will find the right resource for them.
Okay. Yeah. And hopefully this more financial literate population and generation can make better financial decisions and be able to live here in Hawaii.
Absolutely.
That's the end goal, right?
No, that is very true. And I think, the state legislature is leading by example this year on how to be financially responsible, but I'm glad that is trickling down all the way to our schools and classrooms.
All right, great. Well, I like that topic. So thank you so much, Representative Sayama, joining us this morning. And we will see you again soon. Good luck with the session.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, and I'm Annalisa Burgos for Hawaii News Now. See you next time.